A very warm welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching Smart 24 TV. My name is Anthony, and of course, this is the point where we analyze economic policy. I'm with Dr. Owomugasho, who is from the African Parliamentary Network on Sustainable Development Goals. We are halfway through the 2030 agenda, and of course, there are achievements and there are losses, and we are trying to evaluate our progress as a nation in as far as this agenda is concerned. Doctor, government has made efforts, but there are some things that seem to have been obvious, at least in the first place. For example, ending hunger in Uganda. We have 2 rainy seasons. We have fertile natural soils, at least across most of the parts of the country. Yet we still have hunger in several parts of Uganda. We still have people who have only 1 meal a day, and sometimes even less than that in a day. Just look at our streets in Kampala, for example, the number of street children we have. And yet here we are talking about attaining the SDGs 2030 agenda. Where is government not focusing, and where should they be focusing at the moment, if we are at least to achieve some of these things that seem to be obvious in the SDGs?
Okay, I usually refer to maybe the average woman in the village. If you can, maybe she has 4 children, 1 on her back, 1 she's putting behind, she has a hoe or a panga and is moving around. Well, if you look at her, how far is she from the available amenities? Does her 4, 5-year, 6-year-old child have a school nearby? Can she go to a maternity or a health center within or less than the 10-kilometer radius? Does she have water? Or on top of the children, she will also be carrying a jerry can. So if that is the average, the woman, you're saying, now let's not leave this one behind. So what does she need? That's the woman. Maybe she's also tilling land, and that land is even not hers. And she's using a hoe. So this is a woman carrying a child on her back, a jerry can, a hoe, a tilling land that is not hers. She doesn't maybe belong to a circle. She's recently joined the circle. So how can we help such a person? How can we make sure that such a person is included within the planning framework? I think, to me, that is the starting point. If you can get a school within her walking distance, because her world revolves around there, within the 10-kilometer range, so 10 or 15. If they go beyond, that means she's remote, actually. Those are the ones who die in childbirth or whatever it is, because the access to services is very far. So, to me, that is where what should be the starting point. If we can start planning for that particular woman, then we are maybe on our way. So she will need the access to those services. She will need some support to move from the hoe. How much can she produce with the hoe? We have something to eat and be able to sell some and get some income. So that is the starting point. Yes. So as the SDGs are saying, the principle of reaching that farthest person behind first. Don't start with
on top of the ladder. We should start from the bottom.
Yes, the last person. And make sure we leave no one behind. So once you get this woman also on board, her issues are considered. She has some water, her children can go to school, she can access some medical services, then she can be able to produce. She can be able to, actually what she can is maybe there's a road nearby, she can be able to go and sell. So those are, to me, the basics. And we have, I think the number of people who are below the poverty line was about what? Is it 20? It had increased to 21% or so. So that is a big number. So if we are not going to leave those behind, we make sure they get the essential services. And also, these you are looking at, these are the marginalized. They are landless. They are more vulnerable. They lack property rights. So their economic power is really very little. Yeah. So these are the farmers who mostly need the attention of government. They don't have the opportunities. They can't access credit, of course the investment becomes poor, and so that vicious circle continues. So I think that should be the starting point.
Well, will this help reduce also on the number of, for example, street children in Kampala? Because you find this is a very common problem. The government, through KCCA, gets all these people, they bundle them into vehicles, they go imprison them. And you're talking about this woman. Probably they came from a home where the woman has 2 children on her back and she has a hoe, and she couldn't help them. And they had to find a way out. They had to find a way on their own on the streets. Should also this be addressed through such measures, that going down to people like the street children, the vulnerable as well?
Yes, and I think for every program, I'm not very sure what drives the street children, because despite the effort, sometimes you find them there, sometimes they are not there, sometimes they round them up, and like you said, the next time they are there. So what are those factors that actually are driving children on the streets? There have been allegations that some women put their children out there, that they earn more income by begging compared to what they would earn, which is really, and actually that is one of the pillars also of the SDGs, to offer dignity, people to live a dignified life. So if you are on the street begging, that is not a dignified life, and they're trying to break away from that. So these are by putting in place the policies which are targeting these people first, to make sure that they are catered for. Then you can look at those ones who are already maybe active. Those ones are sort of finding their space. But these ones, they are here, maybe, I don't know, they are moving in cycles. So they should be targeted first, I think, according to the principle of reaching the furthest behind first.
On goal number 5, achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls. There's been a lot of effort towards this. Now, for example, in education, you have girls being favored at the university entry points. They're given some extra points, and a couple of other, affirmative action measures that have actually been put in place. Would you say we have also scored in this particular line?
Okay. Yeah. The gender equality has, I think the government has done a lot, like you are saying, in terms of the affirmative action. But there are also some areas which are still, maybe the indicators which they say maybe are not so good. For example, the years of education, the mean years of education, some you'll find that it is about at 64. You get the male, female to male, a bit lower. The labor force participation, which is also a bit low. They are talking about seats held by parliament, but they are also looking at reforms given to women, equal rights to economic resources. That is 5A. To undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance, natural resources, in accordance with the national laws. And I think this is where government has tried. I think recently there was this act which was passed, but I think it did find favor still. The law on inheritance, now it is favoring some people, but they're trying. But still, we see, do we have women and men having equal rights on the economic resources? Do they have the same access to ownership?
Yeah.
No. Do we have maybe the financial services? I think somewhere the number of women accessing credit compared to men was about, I think the women was about like 32% or something like that, or 15%. So it's really low. And that is because they don't have any properties, so they can't offer credit, they can't offer security, so they can't access credit, so the cycle sort of continues. Yeah. But government has put in place some of the policies, but sort of the foundation is still, maybe I think they needed to dig deeper on the root causes to be able to actually address the issue, rather than maybe skimming off it and saying now we have put in an inheritance law women who have been in marriage or cohabiting, they take this much. I think that one is also not helping a lot.
Yeah. Wow. In as far as also human rights are concerned, we've been criticized by the international community most recently, especially after the president signed the Anti-Homosexuality Act. That was something that we are still being criticized of, and according to some international leaders, we are violating human rights. We are not going actually with the UN's agenda of sustainable goals. What would be your opinion on this one? Because also the Ugandans are very happy saying that the president finally has conformed to the culture and norms of our very own land, saying that this is something that's defending our culture as a country and defending our morals.
Remind me that justice. Okay. I think peace, justice, and also strong institutions.
Yeah.
I think I don't know what I want to go into the issue of homosexuality and whatever, because I think government has been clear on that. According to our culture, this is what we are, or this is what we believe in, and that's what we are going with for now, and it is against the law to be engaged in such. But given that on the peace, justice, and also strong institutions, the indicators, the score is also showing that Uganda is stagnating, or it is also not going according to the required rate. And this is given in terms of, there are some indicators now, maybe you are putting in yours now. Yeah. First is, yeah, because, there are some, first of all, like the press freedom index, it is at 41%. Yeah. Access to and affordability of justice, it is also at about 40%. So people cannot afford justice. So I think maybe that takes context in terms of those who are violated, whether they are homosexuals or not. Can they access justice? Do they have the press freedom? Then you have actually children involved in child labor. We have 18.1% in Uganda. So maybe that takes care of the street children. But most importantly, we also have like people who are unsentenced detainees. Unsentenced, we have 51%. Wow. So that is those are areas where you are now the clear indicators. We are saying these are really maybe where we are not doing so well, and it ties in. Are we really getting a just fair society? So, in a nutshell, we are also operating at less than the required maybe 50%.
Peace and justice, that's another very key goal here, because in Uganda, when you look at sometimes how people really strive for justice, it shows you how much need there is for us to actually do more work in this area. And in as far as also press is concerned, I don't know if this is also part of the goals, but the freedom of expression for especially journalists covering different reports and so on. Under the Computer Misuse Act, for example, I feel like that kind of put us backwards, because now under that act, I will have to ask you, Dr. Omugasho, can I actually interview you? Before I do so, I need your own consent. And asking journalism, for example, if you're a freelance journalist or an investigative journalist, that seems like you're actually hindering my rights to access information.
I think, okay, I'm not a journalist, so I don't know. But I think we also have to look at it in a sort of both sides. If you're right now interviewing me, you asked me, I said, okay, I'm here. But if I was just talking to somebody, maybe my family member or anybody, and maybe I expressed some views which I wouldn't express in public, and you're like, I overheard, and you are there printing it. So I may hold some views which are not necessarily maybe very positive, but I don't share them. I don't share them publicly. So if you are saying you are going to use that information, maybe. And I think it also stems from the fact that I think there was also a lot of abuse. So, but if you are moving from abuse now to total sort of cut-off, that becomes a problem. I think there is a need for balancing to see where the journalists can be allowed to do their job, and also for them not to abuse their responsibilities, their roles, and go beyond sometimes defaming people, sometimes embarrassing people, sometimes they're moving from journalism, I think, to something else. So I think that's where the balance needs to be. I don't know who will do that.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Talking about the balance also in terms of work for all, decent work for all. Goal number 8, promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. There's been a concern about the minimum wage, for example, in Uganda. Now, when you talk about decent work, sustainable economic growth for all, isn't it high time we also gave more time and attention to the minimum wage? Because the minimum wage sort of gives us leverage on who earns how much. And that means even the maids who have been earning 50,000, you can imagine right now there are people who are still paying 50,000, for example, for their maids. And because we don't have a minimum wage bill in place. So don't you think one of the ways to achieve goal number 8 would be us, for example, getting to the minimum wage bill?
Interestingly, this is one of the goals where they say the score is moderately improving.
In Uganda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
what are the indicators? Maybe
because the rate, the economic growth rate that we have been sustaining over a period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, it is not enough maybe to attain the goal, but at least it's not like others which are sort of going down. So for it is moderately improving. But when you talk about the minimum wage, I think the whole thing, you're looking at some things you cannot maybe do in isolation. We have a policy framework which is laissez-faire. It's a capitalist. You employ whoever, when they come here, somebody says, I want a job, how much? I have this, you negotiate, they take the job or they don't take the job.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of unemployment. So the minimum wage, you're telling me maybe I need to provide the minimum wage. Me, where I'm working, I'm even not getting my own wage or comparative wage. So where do you start? Where do you stop? But definitely this is something that needs to be looked into. But when they do that, there also have to be some other measures in which they can help the business people. And actually, you're not talking about even a maid. You're talking about this guy who maybe, they call it what? These ones who carry sacks, we know who carry what. There are so many people who are within that sector. The people, the laborers within the villages.
Shamba boys.
Shamba boys. So the person already in the village is not getting the $1 a day, and you're telling them maybe they need to pay a minimum wage. So some of this, the balancing act is where the problems are coming from.
So Dr. Omumgasho, you're saying we don't need a minimum wage in Uganda?
We definitely need it, but it is not just saying now we'll have a minimum wage. A minimum wage is fixed at maybe 10,000 per day. Like I've said, you are saying now minimum wage 10,000 per day. What about this woman in the village who needs to finish her plot of land? Will she afford that? Or she has to till now on her own where she reaches, and that's it. It's not so. When the people are talking about it, they are talking about it in terms of maybe domestic labor, and it goes beyond the domestic labor. The maids and all that. Yeah. So we may need it, but also look at it, are we at that transformed state where we can say now actually we can afford the minimum wage? People are earning 20%, 19% of the population are still earning less than $1 a day. So what minimum wage are we talking about? You may fix it and it is still maybe even lower than what some people are currently getting.
Wow. I still don't get how we are doing good in this area in economic growth. Yes, we've seen statistics showing GDP is growing, and we are projected to grow this year by, I think, 5 to 6%. But it seems things on the ground seem so different. It looks so different on the ground.
I think maybe we go back to the issue of the poverty and how maybe the distribution of resources. Maybe that's where the challenge comes in. As far as the economic statistics are showing, we've been having sort of a positive trend. Even at COVID time is where it declined, but we also didn't go. I think we went some negative somewhere, maybe 2020. But generally, we had been having a positive trend. Yeah. But with this positive trend, you are getting some people who have their income is massive. I don't know from where. I had
the big wigs.
the big wigs. Somebody recently I read somewhere where somebody was like, like Ugandan money is actually comes from they call it what? Under the sea or something like that. Because you see somebody with money, they don't have a job. They don't pay taxes. They don't do whatever. But they have money. But when you say, how much have you paid the Revenue Authority? Maybe it's not there. Where is your job? Where are you working? Nothing.
They are dealers. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Deal where at some point they should be. So, but they have money. Some genuinely, there are some businesses which are flourishing and they are doing money. But the difference in income from these ones who are on the top and these ones who are below is so huge. So that when I'm earning 300,000 a month, and I'm being averaged with this, I see people be winning cases in billions, 250 billion awarded. Yeah. And at the same time, that time when they divide, we get the average per capita for all of us. Yeah. And we are both growing.
I think that's not fair.
So we are both growing, but somebody is really astronomically. They are in billions, and me, I'm earning 300. But the average is we are all what? Growing. And maybe that's where the challenge comes from, saying we are actually moving, when actually the distribution of income is very unfair.
What are some of the indicators in this bracket that give us a very clear picture of the special umuntu wawansi? Because I know our viewers sometimes, when we talk about these, some of these things, they feel like they are far-fetched. But for a GDP to grow, how can the person selling mukene in the market somewhere know that, hey, what I'm doing here is actually contributing to the economy, or it's actually taking it backwards? What are some of those indicators in terms of the GDP growth annual rate that can actually be related to the common person?
Of course, I think the common person is actually, they like they said, they are the backbone of the country, or they used to be. You get somebody growing maybe 2 acres of maize or beans. But like I said, this is the woman now, that 10-kilometer far, deep in the village. So the middleman is the one who will come to pick the beans. And comes when they already, they are indebted, maybe it's time for school fees, they are selling at that very low price. So they get very little money, and you have this middleman, takes the beans, takes the maize, holds it a bit, transports it to Kampala, and sells at 10 times or 5 times, or maybe more than double the price. So the person is contributing to the economy, the growth of the economy, but their share, the return share is minimal compared to maybe the next levels. And that's why we've been saying now, what can be done to make sure that these people who are actually producing can be cushioned, can have a market. That's why government has been putting in maybe roads, also these markets. But we need to do more to make sure that those who produce can actually save and get the returns they deserve.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. We're going to take a very short break, Doctor. When we return for our final segment, we want to, first of all, there's an SDG on quality education. And we want to know our scores on this one, because our education has been blamed for a very long time for not producing people who are competent having the relevant skills for the job market. And our unemployment rates, you can see clearly that they are escalating. Evident of this is the fact that the crime rates are high, people robbing with guns, and this is due to the fact that people seem to be desperate because they have nothing else to feed on. And where is our education in this? Our education system seems not to be taking care of the needs, the current needs of the economy. Also, we want to address some of the issues in the health sector. I don't know which SDGs that is, but it's definitely something that is crucial to economic development is a very healthy population. How are we doing in this area? My name is Anthony, and we are talking the Sustainable Development Goals progress in Uganda. I'm with Dr. Owomugasho Daisy, who is the Chief Technical Director of the African Parliamentarian Network on SDGs. We return shortly after this quick break.